All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into someone whose name might make you think, oh boy, history class. But his ideas are actually like surprisingly relevant to how we live now. We were talking about Anicius Manlius Severinus Boethius,
Yeah, try saying that 3 times fast,
right?
or even once for that matter.
Exactly. We're just going to call him Boethius for our own sanity here.
Definitely.
So what's so fascinating about Boethius is that he wasn't just like some philosopher in an ivory tower, you know?
Oh, absolutely not. This was a guy right in the thick of it. I mean, a high-ranking official in ancient Rome when everything's falling apart.
Yeah, we're talking 5th century CE. The Roman Empire is like crumbling all around him, and he's trying to keep things from completely falling apart. Just, can you imagine the pressure?
Talk about a stressful job, right?
Seriously.
But it gets even more intense.
Oh, yeah.
Because to really grasp how crazy this period was, Boethius ends up accused of treason against the Ostrogothic king Theodoric the Great
Whoa.
and gets imprisoned for it.
Right. Accused of treason, thrown in jail. That's like straight out of a movie or something.
It's high drama.
Totally. And it's while he's in prison facing this like incredibly tough situation that he writes his most famous work, The Consolation of Philosophy. Talk about finding inspiration in kind of dark places.
Right.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about what we do in those circumstances.
I don't even know if I could write a grocery list under that kind of pressure, let alone a philosophical masterpiece.
It really is remarkable.
Okay, so let's dive into The Consolation of Philosophy. I'll be honest, the title makes it sound a little like, well, intimidating. Like I need a dictionary and a philosophy degree just to get started.
You're not alone in thinking that.
Yeah?
It does sound kind of heavy. But it's actually structured as a dialogue, which makes it surprisingly engaging.
No.
So picture this Boethius alone in his cell. And instead of a guard coming in, he's visited by Lady Philosophy herself.
Lady Philosophy, so like a real person.
Well, not a literal person, more like the embodiment of wisdom, you know?
Yeah.
She's there to guide him through his despair.
Okay, so it's like a philosophical heart-to-heart written almost like a play or something.
Exactly. A dialogue between a troubled mind and wisdom itself.
I like it.
And at the heart of their conversation is a question that, well, we can all relate to even today.
Which is?
How do we find happiness when life seems so random and unfair?
Man, that is a question for the ages, isn't it?
It really is. And that's why we're still talking about Boethius all these centuries later.
So how does he answer that?
Yeah.
How are we supposed to find happiness in a world that, well, often feels anything but happy?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
I'm intrigued.
Boethius and Lady Philosophy, they take us on this journey of self-discovery. And the core message is this true happiness, the kind that lasts. You can't build your life on things that come and go.
So you're saying like wealth, fame, power, all that stuff, most people seem to be chasing after. That's not where real happiness lies.
Yeah, Boethius argues that chasing those things is like being strapped to a constantly spinning wheel of fortune.
Oh, I see.
You might get a thrill out of the ups and downs, but you have zero control over where it stops.
Oh, man, that is such a good analogy.
Right.
Like you're saying there's this wheel of fortune spinning away and we're all kind of stuck on it for the ride.
Exactly. And Boethius uses this really vivid image of the wheel of fortune to drive home the point that life, it has its ups and downs for everyone. It's inevitable.
Like that whole thing about the only constant is change, right?
Right. But here's the key. Boethius is saying if you build your life on those fleeting things, the wealth, the status, the stuff that can disappear overnight, you're basically asking to get flung off the wheel at any moment, up one day, down the next. Talk about a recipe for instability and
But
unhappiness.
totally. It's like building a house on a foundation of sand. One good storm and poof, it's gone.
Exactly. But he's not just doom and gloom here. Boethius says, if you build your life on a foundation of things that are lasting, and within your control, things like virtue, like a strong ethical character, wisdom knowledge, then you're much more stable. The wheel might still spin, you'll still face challenges, but you're not going to get completely thrown off course.
It's like building your house on solid rock this time. No matter what storms come your way, you've got that strong foundation to keep you grounded. I love that. Especially like in today's world where everything feels so uncertain and chaotic, so much noise. It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of it all.
Absolutely. And that brings up a really interesting question. Because you might be thinking, okay, if we have free will, like Boethius talks about, doesn't that mean we can just steer clear of the wheel of fortune altogether?
Right. Like, can't we just carve our own path, make our own luck, and avoid those ups and downs?
That is a fantastic question.
Mm.
And it leads us to another major theme that Boethius grapples with in the Consolation of Philosophy, the whole idea of free will versus fate.
Okay, yeah. This is where I usually have to like grab my brain because it's about to start hurting.
It's a real head scratcher. Basically, the question is, if God knows everything past, present, future, then did we really have a choice in any of it? Did we ever truly have free will?
I know, it's enough to make you question everything.
Right.
So how does Boethius try to resolve this? Which side does he come down on, free will or destiny?
Okay, so this is where Boethius gets really mind-blowingly insightful. He suggests that God, because God exists outside of time and space as we know it, it experiences all of time at once. Like the past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously for God.
So it's like God has this like ultimate streaming service and can just binge watch the entire history of the universe in one go while we're stuck watching week to week.
I like that analogy.
All right.
But the point Boethius is making is that just because God already knows what choices we're going to make, that doesn't mean we didn't freely make them.
Okay. I think I'm kind of getting it, but help me wrap my head around this a little more.
All right, imagine you're reading a book. You already know the ending, right?
Right. Right.
But the characters in the book, they still had to make choices, experience challenges, learn and grow along the way, even though their ultimate destination is already known to you, the reader.
Okay.
It's about holding those two ideas together, our limited perspective of time and God's unlimited perspective.
So our free will still matters in the story of our lives, even if God is a few chapters ahead. It doesn't make our choices any less meaningful.
Exactly. And you could see how that would have been such a comforting thought for Boethius while he was unjustly imprisoned, right?
Yeah.
The idea that even though he was in a terrible situation, he still had the power to choose how he responded to it.
Yeah.
And that is a powerful idea that we can all apply to our own lives.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that even when it feels like the world is spinning out of control, we still have agency. We always have a choice in how we respond to what life throws our way. So we've got Boethius facing these like incredibly difficult challenges, imprisonment, a crumbling empire, wrestling with these huge existential questions, and he finds solace, even hope, in these philosophical ideas about happiness, virtue, and the nature of free will. But what's the takeaway for those of us trying to navigate the 21st century? Like if Boethius had a Twitter account, what kind of things would he be posting? Can you imagine though, like Boethius with a Twitter account?
Oh man, he would be like dropping truth bombs left and right.
Right, all those deep thoughts and philosophical zingers.
It'd be trending for sure.
He'd probably be calling us all out on like our obsession with superficial stuff. You
Oh,
know?
totally. Like how many likes did you get? What filter are you using for that selfie?
Exactly. And Boethius was all about like focusing on what really matters, right? Those inner qualities.
Absolutely. Wisdom, kindness, integrity.
Yeah.
The things that actually make us better human beings.
Yeah, not just like a better Instagram feed.
Exactly. I bet he would be encouraging us to spend less time scrolling and more time like learning, growing, connecting with each other in meaningful ways.
It's funny how these ideas from like centuries ago can still feel so relevant.
It's true, though. Human nature hasn't really changed all that much, even with all the technology we have now.
I guess that's the beauty of philosophy, that it tackles these like timeless questions that we all grapple with.
Exactly. And Boethius, even though he was writing during like a really chaotic time, he offers some surprisingly relevant advice for us today, you know?
Totally. So what's like the biggest takeaway? What would Boethius tell us if he were here?
I think he'd remind us to focus on what we can control. Our own choices, our responses to adversity, our pursuit of knowledge and inner peace, and to not get too caught up in the things that are ultimately outside of our control.
That's such a good reminder. It's so easy to get swept up in the chaos of the world, the news, the pressure to keep up with everyone else.
Right. But Boethius reminds us that true peace, it comes from within.
It does. And, you know, his emphasis on virtue and inner strength, it reminds me a lot of Stoicism.
Oh, absolutely. They share a lot of common ground.
Which is interesting because Stoicism seems to be having a bit of a moment lately.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. It's a philosophy that's all about like recognizing we can't control everything that happens to us,
Right.
but we can control how we respond to it.
So it's about focusing on what we can influence.
Yes, our thoughts, our actions, our reactions, and finding peace and contentment, even in the midst of challenges.
I like that. So if any of our listeners are like intrigued by these ideas about virtue and inner peace, maybe exploring Stoicism could be like a cool next step.
Totally. It's a really practical philosophy. It gives you actual tools for navigating the ups and downs of life.
Perfect. So on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought inspired by Boethius. Life is a journey, right?
It is.
And like any good journey, it's going to have its twists and turns, its unexpected detours, maybe even a few potholes along the way.
That's life for you.
But as Boethius reminds us, we always have a choice in how we navigate those bumps in the road.
We do.
We can choose to focus on building inner strength, cultivating wisdom, responding to challenges with grace and resilience. And in doing so, we might just find that even in the midst of uncertainty, there's a deep well of peace and contentment to be discovered within ourselves. Until next time, keep diving.